upon money that real money it's received. So oil comes out of the ground, petrodollars enter into the Middle East. That's real money. That money is then secured in order to manage. That money is then leveraged against in order to create a bigger pot. Why do they want a bigger pot? Because private equity firms charge 2% annual management charge on a few hundred million. That's not bad. And then that money is used to promote certain concepts and businesses in society, which can be to the detriment. I mean, look, does a small business... When I was growing up, small businesses were more prevalent. Yeah? Who's been to Edinburgh here? Anybody notice a difference in the microeconomy of Edinburgh? Go to Edinburgh and see what it's like. It's a microeconomy. What I mean by that is you have independent businesses. The independent bookseller. Who goes to the independent bookseller now? Just one. You can't go to Borders anymore. They've just gone out of business. Can't pay back their loans. Can't pay it back. Another example of how this works is Starbucks in Australia. Anybody know the story of Starbucks in Australia? They had to leave. 6 months ago, Starbucks exited the Australian market. Why? Because the culture of coffee drinking in Australia is such they went to their independent coffee houses and weren't convinced by the incessant marketing of the lifestyle that Starbucks leads us to. And that incessant marketing, money plays a part in that. The manipulation of society, money plays a part in that. So the inflated money being borrowed by these organizations, marketing costs, etc., play a role in the way businesses grow. Real money would restrict those opportunities. Yes?
It's a similar question. I understand that the funding will be different to all these debts funded for businesses. But a problem with the current banking system is they only consider profitable businesses, like a casino compared to a hotel. But won't this ethical banking do the same? Because you're still responsible to investors and you're more dependent on the success to make your money back.
Let me see if I understand you correctly. So you're saying that this system would not challenge the principles of the corporate structure as it currently stands?
Pretty much. Because you're still only going to be looking at the numbers to see that the business is making profit for you to invest in.
This comes down to not interest, not money creation, but the corporate structure itself. I'll give you an example of where this plays a role. General Motors. Okay? In this book, you'll read this example in this Joel back in the corporation book. Back in the 70s, there was a mother and her children stopped at a set of traffic lights and they were rear-ended by a drunk who was twice over the legal limit. The car exploded and all 5 occupants died, the mother and her 4 children. So 4 children. 4 children, they all died. An investigation was held and it was found that General Motors had made a corporate decision not to safeguard the fuel tank in the design of that particular vehicle. And actually it was argued that the executives of GM were not compelled to make that decision because it was not profitable. So what they actually did, this is very interesting, what they did, they assigned an actuary type individual to say, right, listen, how many of our cars we have on the road? 43 million. Okay, how many of these accidents do we expect? So the statistical analysis. Okay, how much is each of these accidents going to cost us? About £200,000 each in compensation. Okay, well let's divide that figure by the number of cars that we have on the roads. Okay, so it's going to come to, the cost of not changing is going to come to about $2.50 per car. The cost of changing the fuel tank from being close to the rear bumper to a centralised area, which is safe from a rear-ender accident, is going to be about $8 per car. So they made a corporate decision not to move that fuel tank. So this comes down to the corporate structure. So what Joel Bacon argues in his book is that there needs to be more corporate responsibility, corporate governance around issues where harm can occur, but is not necessarily proven. And so there would be a change perhaps in the corporate structure, which would then be, keep spilling water, which would then be better for society. So it's a separate issue to the money. Yes?
Do I understand correctly that you're saying it's not just a question of interest, but also a better understanding of liability, so it could be the limited nature of limited liability?
Yeah, corporate governance is something which plays a part in this. I mean, I've simplified it in quite an NLP way to say that the corporate structure has meant that the bankers themselves, we'll just take a couple more and then we'll call it a wraps. The bankers themselves have been, there's legislation to support the way in which they've behaved, which is to create profitability for their shareholders. Now, a lot of these executives in the banks are on quarterly targets. So they have to meet their quarterly targets. And that's the way you increase shareholder value. Now, free market capitalism would argue that actually